Hi, everybody, and welcome to a brand new show here on quantumplanet.world. As above, so below, a quantum perspective on astrology and cosmology. And today, in the first edition of this show, we're going to be doing the Cosmic History Codes, which is really looking at the stellar nations pathway of our ancestral DNA from the stars. As always, I'm joined by my wonderful teacher and guide, Leslie Shankman from the Stellar Nations Pathway. Hi, Leslie, how are you?
Really good, sort of being centered in the midst of all this.
Right. So, today's show is something that we've been planning for a while, been super excited about it. Lots of astrologers talking about this. Is coming up in 2 days' time. The Pluto ingress into Aquarius is a big deal in itself, but it's an even bigger deal because it's getting this kind of, I would say, like a sun blessing or a sun purification or a sun kiss right before it enters Aquarius. And this is what is known as a Cazimi. So we're going to get into what all of this means, but rather than look at it through the astrological point of view directly, we're going to be looking at what's going on with the astrology, but from the cosmic history code point of view of looking at the various other fixed stars in the universe and what's coming through them on the points of importance. So, Leslie, this is our second edition. Thank you, everybody, for all of the feedback on the one we did on the winter solstice, right? Towards the end of last year. A lot of fun, and I know that me and you have been getting super excited about many of the things coming up because we've got this kind of extra layer which we can look at the evolution here in 2024 on planet Earth. And generally, after having watched a lot of astrology this week, Leslie, in preparation for this video, but also in preparation for this next year of my life, it seems as if everybody's pretty much on the same page and everybody's attention has come into this Pluto Cazimi. So that's kind of my little preface to set this up. But I know you've got a series of slides to show us that is going to make this a little more visual and easy to follow. So where would you like to start, Leslie?
Let's put up the slides and let's just start sliding through it because it's a lot of information, but I know we can get it out there, and it's really good information because it's going to broaden and deepen and give us a container to hold all this in. So I would like to put up the slides.
I mean, you can't make this stuff up, when I see the 2959, I'm just like, it's just sometimes it's mind-boggling how the universe does things. And of course, I know we both watched the wonderful Stephen Burns and his videos on the sun and the things that it's doing. And I'm watching the sun, Leslie, and I'm seeing that the sun is like the conductor of the orchestra. There is nothing ad hoc about any of these solar flares or when they hit or which planets they hit or any of this. It's all like a beautiful coordinated symmetry. And this to me is, well, it's actually the beginning of a series of blessings that Pluto gets as it enters Aquarius. I think Mercury comes in a few days' time or the beginning of February, and then it gets a blessing also from Mars. It gets one from Venus as well. So all of the interpersonal planets are all going to pass over Pluto in the next month, basically. And it's almost like, they're giving it a blessing, but it's almost like Pluto is going to give their instructions to those planets as they continue on into their journey and as Pluto starts its own journey into Aquarius. But let's get into what a Cazimi is, because obviously it's an interesting phrase, but where does it come from?
Right, exactly. And I love what you just said because it's very integral to everything that we're just about to bring out.
Right.
So, as you said, we have this exact conjunction of the Sun and Pluto in Capricorn on the 20th, 2959, the last minute of Capricorn.
The last minute, right?
Right. But what's a Cazimi in astrology, just for those who don't know? And also, this is a definition that gives us a nice container. So I appreciate the website I got it from and the person, Johnny Nichols. But basically, the answer, Cazimi, a cycle of any planet, a Cazimi represents a crucial moment. It occurs when a planet forms an exact conjunction with the sun, so that initiates a new cycle. And the word itself is derived from an Arabic phrase that means in the heart of the sun. So it's here within the sun's temple that new missions are seeded. And the idea is the planet gets purified in the sun's rays and fresh truths are revealed. So Cazimis can offer divine downloads and insights if we're open to receiving them. So now, as we look at the stellar history or the cosmic history codes and the stellar rays, we've got a lot of insight here we can take. So let's go forward with all that.
And just again, to reiterate to anyone who's new to our show, what we're doing here is looking at the astrology of this particular moment, the Cazimi, but we're going to bring in the cosmic history codes through the degrees in the zodiac that are being affected by this Cazimi, and which of the fixed stars in the stellar nations pathway
Right.
are associated with that. So just to give
Yeah,
that.
exactly. So we've got, I'm talking about cosmic history. What's cosmic history, right? Is it something someone made up in a Greek time? No, actually, it's something broader, deeper, and from a bigger context. Because the star Antares, which is the heart of the scorpion, is where the Akashic records of the history of the galactic history of the Milky Way galaxy are held. And this is a seventh dimensional star. So these stories of who we are, what we've been through, are held in sound patterns or frequencies. So then you ask, well, where did that come from? This is all cataloged in the work of Dr. Beatrix Saziel and Aniko Gresco, and specifically in the book, The Stellar Nations Soul Families, which is the Cosmic History Chronicles. And these books were first, or this information was first apprehended by them in 2005 and 6 over a series of about 18 months. They have long worked with stellar consciousness in this life. Beatrix is a homeopath and a MD, and Nico is quite a healer of many modalities. But their whole impetus has always been healing from the root. So the root is, what is our cosmic karmic history? What's at the bottom of all these frequencies that manifest into who we are and our wellness or lack of wellness? So they were approached at this point in 2005 and 6 by the delegations of the 13 stellar nations, the delegates, who said, you know, there's a new level of information that we want you to attenuate to, which is what they did. And this is in these books and many other publications they have, a number in English, which I've had the grace to publish, not publish, but edit. So that's why I've gotten inside the information. But at any rate, I just want to point out that these are living books because they are, and that's an odd concept, but what they're talking about is the stars as points of consciousness, places where aspects of our soul live. So you may think of it as really like almost cells in our larger light body. And we'll build on that. You'll see how that works. So what these 13 stellar soul families that they were taken through over this period and cataloged in the books, and they still work with them all the time. There's constantly, information coming out that we supplement in blogs, because as our collective opens up, we have the ability to get more information, so it comes in. But these soul families are essentially destiny pathways that are delineated through the stars. Remember, the stars as points of consciousness holding aspects of our consciousness and our souls. And because it's coming from Antares, seventh dimension, these are held in sound patterns or frequencies but then we need to apprehend them. So they're fleshed into myth or stories. And that allows, these stories allow the relational dynamics of the frequencies to be captured. And when we hear these myths, it can activate our knowing of the frequencies, because really what we are, we're an entire morphogenic field in our body. We've got the etheric body, our emotional body, mental body, and our higher layers of our light bodies. And I'm not going to go through all this now, but we can recognize with these 13 soul families, these are archetypes that we know well within inside of ourselves. Our subconscious holds these: unicorn, which has to do with creation; the bear nation, which has to do with the heart qualities and Christ consciousness; the dragon guards divine will; the Pegasus is a messenger; the dolphin healing, transmitting love. So I won't go through all of them, but angels, arthropods, cosmic humans, winged lions, that's part of the pantheon of us.
Well, it's almost like the archetypal tapestry of this part of the universe, right, Leslie? And we contain all of that within us. And the only other thing I can compare to the written transmissions in the Stellar Nations books is like when I was at Buddhist school and I was receiving transmissions directly from lamas that are still manifesting in my life now, over a decade later. And this material, I have to say, had a lot more of an instant effect. Literally, the moment we opened the books to do the series and Ella started translating the Spanish, it activated that archetypal DNA within me, and being somewhat, multidimensional, I was able to experience, and still, even this week, as I've shared with you, many of the energies coming through this particular Cazimi have already hit me and hit my own Antares code, and I'm able to experience that. And as a consequence, able to look back into my soul's journey and understand in this present moment that my soul is experiencing something still in other parts of the cosmos, but are having a direct effect here because the time-space continuum is only now. So I just wanted to add that in. But
well, exactly. And you bring out a good point, which I'm going to just elaborate on in a minute, is that it's great that we're getting all these information, but can we make sense of it? Now, you could make sense of it because you've been embodying and understanding the stellar pathway since June, and you've done it in a large degree. So all of a sudden, everything, comes to you in an understandable way, a picture. And that's, I have this up here because this is just an example of part of the stellar pathway of the whale nation. And the whales are all about the part of us, a part of creation that has awoken and is metamorphosizing to return to their original divine destiny. And I've really, as I've made my way through these pathways, I've started thinking of them. It's like having galactic ley lines or something. It's really just a way of understanding. But for example, I'm not going to do this too heavily, but there's part of the whale in the metamorphosis process, it really gets kind of speedy, and they go to Diptha first, and then they go to Alresha, and then we're hidden, but there's another star, and then they go here and here and here. And it's each one is a point of consciousness that's adding to their building growth and evolution. And then as we read that, or as we don't just read it, we feel it. And so it wakes up our relevant story. So it's coming from inside. It's not an outside thing like, oh, this is what's happening. It wakes up whatever that dynamic wants to bring out in our memory. So it gives us we actually have a stellar remembering field all around us, a matrix of this, basically our galactic DNA. But it's there, but if we don't remember it, we can't use it. And we kind of need to name it to remember it. So this helps us do it. And now is the time to do it, because we'll see in a minute. Okay, let's just drop in quickly now into telling a relevant part of the cosmic history for this Cazimi. So I'm going to tell you a story, but I want to say to our audience, this is not a story that's right or wrong, true or false. This is just a story. Like, let's see, feel this story, or just, I'm basically saying, let's try not to be too mental with it.
But also just to say, Leslie, some of the most powerful stories I've read supposedly were meant to be fiction, and Lord of the Rings immediately comes to my mind. And yeah, I think Lord of the Rings is some sort of Bible to get us through everything that we've been experiencing. So let's not write stories off as some sort of make-believe, because I think some of the most powerful experiences I've had in my life have come through stories. So just also.
Yeah, I didn't mean to put down the idea of story. I think what I wanted to say is
it's somehow offending the bard within me. But it's like,
I know. Thank you for defending that, because it was a wrong impression. I really want to say,
no,
let's give stories their due, like what they are historically. They're a transmission. And I think we've gotten like too quote unquote scientific to try to analyze true, false, or whatever. So I was really meaning that.
The beauty about stories, Leslie, actually is that we can receive them in the way that we want to without having this sort of bias that somebody's saying, hey, this is the truth. And so a story gives us the option to take what truth from it resonates for us without somebody trying to give that to us. And I think that's a really beautiful way to look at this material.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks for helping me clarify that. Okay. So what we want to understand is that once upon a time, a very long time ago, our sun, and we can call him Solana, was an angel, or is an angel star, and he was an 8th Pleiadian star. He was a little brother to the 7 sisters. Now, it was the dawn of another Aquarian age, and at that point, he was in his adolescent phase of a being. And he was being trained by all the greatest masters in the galaxy for his fate. But his fate was very similar to his father Atlas's fate, and Atlas held the worlds together. And as an adolescent, he looked at that and said, I'm not doing that. That's boring. I'm not that you're asking me to step into a box. Forget it. So he had all these inner dreams and adolescent urges, and he kept thrusting in his orbit with all that. And finally, one day, the momentum of his dreams broke him out of his orbit. And he was absolutely thrilled because he flew off feeling that he was going to realize all these wonderful dreams and creations. However, in his orbit, when he was in touch with his divine destiny, he was a six-dimensional star. And the moment, well, quickly, after all these euphoria of breaking out, he started to fall in experience or density. And he finally caught himself on the edge of the fourth dimension because he had stepped out of his link with the divine. He left his divine fate or pathway. Now, what happened was he kind of realized in a confused, foggy way that everything was different. And he felt guilt, shame, confusion, and he pulled an astral fog over himself and went into kind of a coma for a very, very, very long time. But then the light of the photon belt came into his point of the galaxy, and he started to hear again the love calls of his sisters and his mother Pleione and his father, and he started to respond like and wake up. And the Galactic Council came forth and looked at him in his dilemma and said, Solana, we have an opportunity for you to get back on the pathway of your fate. You can set up the Milky Way galaxy, arrange the planets around you as you see, and basically your fate was to be the active manager of all these different forces. So here you are. So what happened is Solana set up the Milky Way galaxy. Our planets are really pieces of his psyche. They represent, some of them represent his different members of his Pleiadian family directly. Some of them represent, like Jupiter, is his whole sense of, I can expand, I can do this. They include a little bit of his own persona in it. But at any rate, here he is now working his way through. And we in the Milky Way galaxy, as humans, as above, so below, we really have come in with the same kind of idea, the same fate. We've left our divine destiny. The planets we see through astrology are in essentially pieces of our psyche, and we're figuring things out too.
Well, isn't that true? I seem to recall maybe it was you that was saying this, or one of my astrologer friends, that we incarnate through the planets. As our soul incarnates reincarnates even into this universe, we incarnate down through each of the planets because they're the archetypes. And the final one is the moon before we sort of enter the 3D body. And that really carries a lot of the sort of the more recent karma or something. So I love this idea. It gives us a sort of a passageway of incarnation that makes a lot of sense. And when we're talking about the sun and giving the sun its own personality, which it clearly is, and understanding it's also been on its own journey and it's infused its nature into our universe, which we have been invited to experience. I think it's beautiful.
Well, in a way, the sun is kind of like our atlas, showing us, and we're dearly beloved. Like if in the Stellar Nations, there's a whole conversation in the beginning about how we do come through the ethereal birth canal, collecting all these influences. You said we come through with them around us by resonance of where we are at this point and what we want to do in the incarnation. So we literally create a whole mantle of these etheric forces, of stellar forces. It's a remembering field. It's always around us. But like the sun, when we come into this dimension, we have an astral fog around us and we have to find our way through that. So while we were, we've gone through many cycles of being in 11,000 years of out of the photon belt, 2,000 years in. So our galaxy has been doing this for a long time under the supervision of our sun. But when we're in the dark night out of the photon belt, the sun has a different role. The sun literally is well, actually, I should say we do come through this. I think I just said it. We come through the sun when we're born. That we have a lot of records there. Our sun is almost like a parent to us. It really cares. It's always sending these influences and information into the heart of our planet. There's the iron core crystal that picks up information and then it's radiated back up to us. There's a whole loop, energetic loop, I think a lot of us understand. But anyway, when we're in the dark night, the sun is a different kind of conductor because we're really not so aware of the stellar field and our larger remembering when we're in the dark night, when we're out of the photon belt. So what the sun does when it comes in conjunction with a given star at a certain time, it literally conducts that in, well, certainly to the Milky Way galaxy in some way, but to the Earth specifically. The Earth plays an interesting role in the sun's mind, which is part of the story, but we won't get into it now because it'll take too long. But we're basically a big turnaround planet. You know, we are a planet to pull it all together. So there's a lot happening on the sun. At any rate, that orchestration, one star at a time, you know, would affect the collective, you know. So for instance, on any given day, there's a conjunction with certain stars. It affects the collective. Maybe we have that stellar ray coming through Jupiter. We feel it in a certain way, but it's been all relatively unconscious to us when we've been out of the photon belt. The sun also, very specifically during historical ages that we can look at, you know, Lemuria, Atlantis, Egypt, the sun can and does call in influence, Pleiadian influences, Arcturian influences, Sirian influences to help the development and evolution of the Earth. But you can say, like you said before, that the sun is a certain kind of conductor to us. But here we are in the late 90s, we started coming into the light of the photon belt, our galaxy, and now we're fully in the light of the photon belt. So the sun has a different role. It's not, you know, arbitrating one thing at a time. We're now fully surrounded by all this information, all this light coming in from these stellar worlds, as well as the planets. But the stellar worlds, remember, our cells in our light body, they're points of consciousness. They're part of our larger souls that we're attenuating to in new ways. So the sun has a different kind of role here. Now, and we do too. So this is where I'm going to bring in, this is one page. If you were to get your Antares code run, which you can do through the Stellar Nations, which is going to show what your stellar mantle is, what were the stars at the point of your birth. And this is just one radix. The code has to have about 5 different pages of radixes because it has to lay out only 3 or 4 stellar families at a time. Otherwise, you'd be stuffed with you know, too much information. But what I want to point out,
don't go anywhere with my Antares code these days.
Okay. I want to point out is I think we need to appreciate as humans, we are standing in the middle of all these influences, not only planetary, but stellar. And as you have very accurately, nicely said, often you perceive the stellar rays as the blueprint behind our blueprint. And I think that's very accurate because when you really know how to look at the stellar rays, you can start to feel into the ongoing trajectory of your consciousness, the larger kind of path you've been on, that this incarnation is really, you know, just one point of that you're looking at. So
Well, Leslie, you know, what I find mind-bending about all of the stellar nations is it gives me the history of my soul's journey. How did I get to this incarnation? But what it also did was it explained many things that have happened in this incarnation too, prior to this moment.
Exactly.
It explains what's happening to me in this moment. And it also gives me a clue as to where I might be going, all of which seemingly has already happened to my soul and is re-happening. Right? So, you know, I think this is where our good old friend Dandelion steps in and says, look, this is the best way to understand that the only thing that truly exists is now. And time-space continuums are something you need to get your head around as we evolve into a more expanded space in 2024 and beyond as part of this big shift that's going on here on the planet. Right. So it's something that seems, for those of us used to linear time, a little hard to get our heads around. But once you sort of let go of linear time as the structure with which you live your life by and say, okay, I'm now living in not universal time as in UTC, but as in the universal time that is the cosmos, everything starts to look and feel a little different. And you find there's a lot more plasticity and flexibility in all of it that you didn't really perceive before. So,
So, but you exactly just sort of elaborated what I'd like to bring out. Yeah, it's totally holographic, which is wonderful, but how do we make sense of that? And if we don't make sense of it, we're a chaotic mess. If we do make sense of it, we are so strong and coherent. It makes me think of the tube torus. We have the full flow center, and all our flowing is kind of in a pattern that makes sense, that moves. So that's exactly why we need to start re-attenuating ourselves out of just planetary consciousness. But as I said in the first thing we did, we need to start weaving in our stellar consciousness, because we need to have a bigger container so we can understand ourselves. So these knowing our stars and the meanings of them, what the points of consciousness are saying, really gives us a coherency. Okay, so let's move on. Just a couple more things. If we look at Pluto and the role that Pluto was assigned by Solana. So it's a tough one, because Solana is realizing, in the pathway, what he's done in leaving his destiny. He's realized he's left his destiny. Pluto's a keeper of destiny. He realized Pluto's saying, it's possible to be lifted up from falling, from leaving the channel of our fate, from losing ourselves. Solana sees Pluto in two aspects: the keeper and the lord of the gate into hell, and the keeper and the lord of the gate that leads to rebirth. But when we go into the hell, what is that? It's the inner emotional labyrinth of everything that we've done that's kind of, let's call it anti-light. So where we've left sort of the divine and we've gone into trying things ourselves, that's fine, we're supposed to. But a lot of times, the hurts and the woundings and all the complications that come up, we start creating coping survival mechanisms born from the hurts. We start defending ourselves. We have penance, we have projections. We're being asked, when we go into the gate of hell, to be so brutally honest. And that's why it's the gate of hell. Okay, but you've got to go. You really can't, you've got to strip down I think most astrological people understand this about Pluto. But the thing is, it finally incites a return process. Finally, some part of yourself gets it. It wants to give up all the games. It's willing to go back. And that's where we get into the gate of rebirth. And this is where we're releasing from what, let's call them anti-light patterns, but that's in our personal and our collective morphogenic field. So keep this in mind, because this comes into play when we look at the stars and where we're going with this Cazimi. And we'll say one more aspect of cosmic history here, and then we'll get into the stars.
Yeah.
Pluto was once the moon of Saturn, and Solana set up Saturn as his Pleiadian father, who was Atlas. And Atlas was the one, he was being trained, son, this is the kind of fate you have, like me, hold the worlds together. And I said, he thought that was boring. But what Atlas was always trying to teach Solana is, I can be relied upon, I can be built upon. That's the essence of the fate of Atlas. And he was telling his son Solana, this is what you're trying to grow into. That is a process. That's not a box. That implies that you are going to be an agent in evolution. I can be relied upon, I can be built upon, right? So that is the truth of the divine fate of Solana. And I'm going to suggest of us as well. If we become active agents of evolution and sort of start attuning to all this bigger information and knowing how to flow with it. So
I think that's really wonderful and important point, because essentially, and this is just what I've learned along my own pathway in this lifetime, is that essentially in this yang external form, we are solar beings. And as a bard and a druid, that is a solar order. And when I did my teachings with the U-Shaman, Michael Dunning, we talked about the pre-solar part of this universe that was Saturnian, which is really what we perceive, some people might call the other world, or Lemuria. Goes by many different names according to your own viewpoint or your own cultural upbringings. But what I understand was, before the sun, Solana, came into our universe, we were not physical beings. We were much more etheric beings, much more yin, much more feminine. and much more Lemurian. And it was the sun that's given us this physicality. So I think this is an interesting dynamic to her story, his story, our story. And I feel like, you know, this week was also really powerful, Leslie, right? Because some of us didn't realize, but apparently the Kali Yuga ended this week on the 15th of January. Now I'm thinking perhaps maybe the days were a few out, and I kind of feel that the Kali Yuga really finishes with this Pluto entering Aquarius in the Cazimi. And so we can say a couple of days in the great scheme of things is neither here nor there. It's probably a decimal point somewhere in some ancient calculations. But to me, this heralds the beginning of the end of his story and the beginning of our story, the real rebalancing of the feminine and masculine energies, the reintroduction fully back into our awareness here on Earth of the goddess energy, which has been somewhat, I would say, absent, not fully absent, but certainly fragmented and fractured. So I love all of this, but I just wanted to bring that in because I feel like it's Senor Solana that has given us our physical body and allows us to experience this part of the universe in this most dense form. So we have a lot to thank this being.
And you know what? I could elaborate on that for hours based on the cosmic history. Now we're not going to do that now. But, and then we could even say, well, isn't it interesting that Saturn just went into Pisces and there's a whole, and Formalhat is on it, the star of dreaming. And there's a whole different nature of perhaps where our relationship with this understanding that we need to be relied upon and built upon and be sort of fluid in the evolutionary forces. But that's a whole other thing. We'll stay on track. And what you just said is going to be actually nicely elaborated by the stellar rays that are coming through this Cazimi. Okay, so let's get into what are the stellar rays that are happening both on Pluto and in the sun, on the sun at 29:59 of Capricorn on the 20th. We can see that there's a number of them. I have slides to go through each of them. I want to tell you their message. There's going to be a little more cosmic backstory because they're part of different soul families or parts of us, parts of creation. But they really illuminate everything we've spoken of so far to a new degree and a beautiful degree. So this is all about deeper self-understanding. So let's keep going.
And again, Leslie, just to share with our audience who may be coming to this video for the first time, what we're doing is we're looking at the astrology of the Cazimi. We're seeing which of the stellar nation stars are on the points, in this case, Pluto at 29:59. But as you can see, Leslie has also pulled up all of the other major planetary transits going on and stars affixed to them. Now, each one of these, we could probably do a 3-hour show on.
We could talk forever. These are living forces. It's fascinating. Yeah, and I should have stayed on this longer because just right to give our listeners specific soul families, specific stars. This is where they are. The early ones, 1.20, these are in Aquarius. And then we're going to look first at the 29:51, 29:50, 27. These are in Capricorn, right?
And again, Leslie, can I just ask you to show our audience who may be new to this that we use much smaller orbs than perhaps some traditional astrologers are used.
Yeah. Most of these, when this information was apprehended, they were shown the orbs of the stars, and they are in the book, The Orbs and Charts. Most of them are around 2.5, but they can go up to 3, 3.5, and 4.
But
either way,
about 2.5, right? That's the average orb. So they're quite.
That's the average. Yeah. Although some are notably larger. So I think what I want to do first is look at us in Capricorn and then go into Aquarius. Not that there's any particular sense of evolution about it, but the Capricorn star Alpha Boquete has quite a story to tell us. And so I'm going to refer here to this part of the galaxy. There is a constellation called the Vulpecula, which is nearest a constellation called the Sagitta and the Delphinius. The Sagitta and the Delphinius are where our dolphin points of consciousness live in stars, and that dolphins are healers, and that's the part of ourselves that's never left the divine. And the dolphin's mission is to sing the frequency of love that the divine is in different ways. And also as healers, they help get souls who have left their bodies disincarnated through the astral fields. But that's also beyond just us disincarnating out of our life. As healers, we know sometimes that there's large soul particles we have that are frozen or ancient that we haven't let go of because of some trauma. Sometimes those have to be moved off. So anyway, the vocabula in our astrology is seen as a little fox or something, but in cosmic history, it's actually a shark. And the shark was once an honored part of the dolphin nation, and it was assigned the role as being a guard because these dolphins were getting through astral waters that somehow, that often had lower influences that would try to keep souls looping there instead of going on. So I just want you to get the idea of the lay of the land here.
Yeah.
So it's a shark, but something happened at one point. This whole energy of Alpha Vapeculae now represents a betrayal. It's the position of suddenly being attacked by people we really trust. In fact, people whose job it would be to protect us. And it's like, if you think of what the dolphin is just pure love and innocence, doing its job through the astral waters. And at one point, it was hit by an arrow. So it's like just pure love and innocence being ruthlessly attacked from something that wasn't expected and you actually thought would be a protector, because that was the original role of the shark. Now, what happened here, we can possibly guess, because inside, this is a little harder to see, but Vocapula is here. So the Sagitta is down here, but Vocapula has this whole line of stars called an asterism, and it bends. It's like a straight line, but it has a little bend at the end. They call it the coat hanger because it looks like a coat hanger. But what happened is the fallen members of the arthropod nation, and the arthropods are the part of us or the nation that there's a web of sensitivity and light going through every created thing that carries information back to the creator. And the arthropods help manage that information go back. And they're really a wonderful nation, but there's a huge fallen component of it. So you can imagine if there's webs of information that are being stolen and misused, it's kind of what we've got in our life now, with AI and
well, even Leslie, just on that note, think about the nature of our water. And, it's a big conversation for many of us in the wider spiritual space at the moment. And understanding as 2024 unfolds that the water, the cleanliness of our water, again, Saturn in Pisces, making us look at the structure of water, but most of all within ourselves. And, if our water has been infiltrated by fallen arthropodic technologies like nano or graphene oxide or any of these kind of lower frequency things, then we can understand that this could have been dangerous work for the dolphins if we're using the same analogy, I guess, down in our 3D soup as opposed to the ephemeral ocean of light. But we can understand that even water can have these low frequencies that some beings have to exist in, right?
everything can now. The air, the water, everything in our third dimension. We're trying to evolve with this, but where the cosmic history comes in on this with that star and being in this region is the fallen arthropods did set up a monitor antenna on the fourth dimension. And there's a whole ethereal ocean of light here. And they were able to see the activities of the dolphins that were working in service to the humans. And they actually set up an intergalactic arrow cannon here for attack. And that's the point of which the arrow came out of. And it hit one of the Sagitta stars, which is at about 7 Aquarius. So we may be seeing it as we move into the year. But so this is the energy that Alpha Bokepe is bringing us. So it's a memory, right? I mean, it's just when it's there, it's a memory. It's a pattern of betrayal. And, we can look at it, as we said, how it may be coming out in our world. Now let's go ahead.
Just attempt to paraphrase that for a second, so that I've also understood it correctly myself. So we've got the shark beings, a part of the dolphin family, who are essentially, I guess, the hired henchmen, the strong arms that protect the dolphins. But then they seemingly betray the dolphins by, I guess, making a bad deal with the fallen arthropods who set up a monitoring station. Is that basically what we're looking at here? Is it the protected?
Yeah, let's just take it by relational analogy. You've got the innocent. Now I forget what I was going to say. Let's just leave it with what you said. Yes, you're right. There's, well, energetically, it's just giving us a relational something that happened.
Right. I mean, we're trying to bring this down into a space that we can understand here as humans in the 3D realm. And I guess, you know, a lot of the stellar nations is really telling stories through archetypes, and we have to try and work out what is the symbology and who does it relate to currently, which is what this show is all about, of course, on this Cazimi. So who are the sharks? Well, I think that's an interesting question. And who did the sharks do a bad deal with to further make the situation better? I think we can leave that up to our audience to put the pieces together. But I just wanted to bring
Well,
that into a
that's,
place of clarity.
yeah. And that's kind of the point. It's not like we want to delineate any one answer. It's just like,
Oh,
whoa, we recognize that energy. Whoa, you know, and we start seeing how it's going on around us, in us, how we're influenced by it.
we
You
can
know,
make it super simple. We could say that our governments are the sharks. They're the people who are meant to be protecting us. And who have they done bad technological deals with? Well, that's a question I think we're going to see the answers to in
right.
2024. But that's just one very simple way of trying to explain it. I mean, and like you said, it's not the only one,
Right.
but it's an easy one.
Well, and conversely, we can also say we might recognize that we've been that shark in certain times.
Don't say that. It wasn't me,
That's
Leslie.
part of our Pluto gate of hell is to, that's the good thing about the stellar nations. You start seeing the shadows and you sometimes have to go, oh my God, I have to own that. You know, somewhere in my cosmic history, I know I fell into that trap.
Yeah.
So now let's go to Alpha Indi, which is the other one on Capricorn. Now that's in Alpha Indi is one star in the Indus constellation, but I have to point out where it is and its relationship first. It's in the southern hemisphere sky, and it's above what is seen in as a whale constellation in Lemurian times. I mean, in the stellar nations, very often they're parting the veil of what we think the skies are telling us now, and they're going to a deeper mythology. That's why it's the cosmic history records. It's not coming out of our minds or experiences. So from in Lemuria, this whole whale constellation was apprehended in the sky. You know, that was in more southern skies, Lemuria. And it was called Wahoha. And they also worked with whales. Whales were, it was islands, 133 islands in the water. Whales were there. There was an active correspondence because, you know, Lemurian, you were right, we were less corporal in the sense that we had a much more tantric understanding of being part of everything, because we were basically, Lemuria was bringing the fullness of the feminine on earth into expression, so we could have it as an anchor point. So anyway, what we're having here, whether we know it or not, is with this Alpha Indi coming in, is a collective Lemurian memory, because the whole idea of riding the whale, the whales taught Lemurians how to heal Mother Earth, how to feel the breath, the message of the body of the earth, and how to listen to the song of the creation of the cosmos, and how to sing and resonate with it. So now you have this whole field of our body, of our earth, of the cosmos, of the stars, of the planets, as a resonant field that we know that we're really part of. So how can we sing with that, join that? So this is kind of the energy behind the Indus, because the Indus constellation is right above what was perceived as Wahoha. So if we get to the star, Alpha Indi, at 2927 Capricorn, it's like the whale rider. It's like us as a human. It's inviting us to get back on the whale, to ride the whale. We can be shamanic whale riders. We can get back on the whale, because the whale is the part of us or part of creation that is metamorphosizing back. It's a whale angel being. That's part of a bigger story, but it's awakened and it's on its way back. And so now we're, as humans, this star is telling us, oh, look, you can get on the back. You can see yourself as human beings who denied our alliance with the divine pathway of the God and the goddess. We can understand we left our destiny. We can understand we're awakening. We can understand there's a deeper yearning. We can understand that we can go through a metamorphosis process. And what's our task with this? Our task is to recognize our transgressions and failures and accept mercy, grace. That's a huge divine principle. Mercy, the idea that we can just, if we let it happen and get ourselves out of the way, we can accept being lifted back. We can return. So that's what this star is telling us right now.
So a
Shall
couple
I
of
go
things.
on?
Yeah, I'm just going to add a couple of things in, if I may, actually, Leslie. So first of all, I hadn't thought of this movie for a long time, but I'm definitely going to go and dig it out now. I think it was originally from New Zealand, and the movie was called The Whale Rider. It's about a young
Exactly.
girl. So I haven't watched that movie for a long time, but I'm definitely going to see if I can find it. But it seems to me already we're already 2 stars into this. Sort of breakdown of this Cazimi, and what I'm getting is like, okay, so we've got the sharks who maybe did a bad deal that sold us out, to people who've been monitoring us ever since. I think we can get that one fairly easily. Again, you know, the anaretic degree of Capricorn is looking at exactly these things: misuse of power, misuse of position, right? But now we've got this piece here to recognize transgressions and failures and accept. And I guess this applies first of all to ourselves, but it can also
Exactly.
apply to the
Always
shark.
in yourself first.
Self first, but then, you know, if we're going to truly be in a place of going back to our original destiny calling, then perhaps we need to roll out the mercy and grace to the sharks also, because somehow we let them do all of this, even though we feel like they did it to us and these goddamn bad people, etc., etc. Somehow we also have to accept responsibility that we allowed it to happen, and I think that that's
Well, but you know, you're still being two-third dimensional with that, because it's not they and them and us and them. It's
I know
actually
it's
all
how
aspects of ourselves.
I know, but somehow in duality, you know, it's
I
difficult
know.
if we don't put a name to a face. But I'm just trying to give us a 3D template with which we can understand how we might experience this in 3D, and where we might need to direct the mercy and the grace, of course, to ourselves
Yeah.
first.
Ourselves first. And you're right. Well, when we do it to ourselves, it becomes part of our aura. Then it becomes a natural, by resonance almost, that we can see the world that way. We can see others that way. And then we realize they're not really others. So
Yeah,
kind of a mystery happens.
yeah,
First of all, the whale rider is mentioned in the book. It says, yeah, wow, that's what it meant. The Maori shaman, you know, go watch that movie.
yeah.
So yes, they say that. All
Okay,
right.
so these are the 2 stars in Capricorn. So I think we're getting a little bit of this sort of energy of what the final moments of Capricorn are about, and what's coming through, and how do we start to transform that. Of course, it's always about the alchemy, right? Whether it's in the 3D, the 4D, the 5D, we're always trying to alchemize the lower frequencies, the things that we perceive are perhaps not serving us. So where do we go from here?
Yeah, but the point is, are we alchemize it with any wisdom? Do we know the forces that we're naming that are there, that we can name, that we can help, that can help guide us? See, now these are forces, when we wake up to our stellar parts of ourselves, then we're doing it with a wisdom, you know? Okay, so now we're going to go back and we're going to take the bird nation. We got 3 stars here. I'm going to need to give you a little context, which I'll do with the slides. Just basically, the bird nation part of us is a gift to the cosmic humans. It's the nation, it's the part of us that includes the fairies, the devas, the elves, the co-creators of our manifested reality. And in the beginning, you know, those forces have kind of withdrawn because we don't respect them, understand them, you know, largely as a society, as humanity anymore. But there's that of the bird nation. The bird nation was also given to us as cosmic humans, as a part of ourselves, to be messengers that would reflect our consciousness. Like, how are we doing with our planet, which is our body, which we co-created with the fairies and the elves? And how are we doing with our own bodies? So there's a lot to the bird nation, but roughly that's just a contextual background, okay? So what we're going to see here with these 3 stars is kind of a reflection of our consciousness, and where can our consciousness go now? Okay, so along those lines, when I said that the bird nation is a reflection of our consciousness, there's actually 5 bird constellations in the sky that represent in the galactic ley lines, as you, if you will, as it's laid out in the Stellar Nation stories, it's like Aquia, the eagle, is where we learn how to use, we're called into using power well, or into leadership. And power is not power over. Power is the ability to be resonant and sustain the divine frequency coming through you, because then that entrains other things around you of lower frequency towards the divine. So that's what the Aquia is. But then if we misuse power, we fall into the Raven constellation, and those stars show us what happens there. Then we have to finally, it's very Plutonian. We have to go to the Phoenix and kind of burn to ashes and let it all go. And when we do that, we come into the light, peace, the dove. And then this is almost like an alpha, everything's alpha, omega, infinity symbol. The flight pattern represents the ongoing nature that even if something is destroyed, the kernel of truth and wisdom and what was realized is never destroyed. That's always an ongoing part of creation. But we come kind of to the Cygnus, the swan, which is where kind of the stars on here help us remember that our co-creators are the fairies and the elves, and that creation is a lot more than just us. Also helps us to remember our heart qualities in Christ consciousness, and helps us to remember that if we think we're being noble by doing penance and saying, oh, we're so bad, we're not. We're blocking the return. We have to even give up this, like, this tendency we have to want to sort of punish ourselves for being, oh, I recognize I'm bad, so now you should take me back. No, you have to actually fall into being, you know, you have to let go of the penance, or we can't do this ascension. Anyway.
Well, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because, you know, it's not going to come up here so much, but this seems like a period where a lot of fallen angels are redeeming themselves through their, penance is a strong word, I definitely say, but we can say through service. And we've talked about this before, I think, on previous calls, being in service to servitude. And at some point that doesn't serve us anymore. And I think that there's a point where we have to acknowledge, say, okay, I feel like I've given enough of myself in this process, and actually now I need to bring it back to the center point of the you know, the figure of 8, and say, I'm going to put myself in the center. I've done my penance. I'm still going to be in service, but I'm not going to be in service to servitude because I feel like I've been a bad person, and I'm going to keep myself. Otherwise, you just keep yourself in the frequency, I'm a bad person. And that doesn't mean suddenly you decide you're a good person, carry on doing bad things, but because you're a good person, but in your mind you say that you're a good person, you are a good person. So this is where I think humility and inner reflection, to say, hey, you know what, dude, maybe you didn't get things so right early in your life, but hey, you're not doing that anymore. You brought awareness to it. You stopped doing those things maybe some years ago once you realized. And hey, give yourself a little pat on the back and say, okay, buddy, good one there. But hey, maybe over here you still got a bit of work to do. And I think that as long as we've got this inner dialogue that keeps us, as the Buddhists would say, on the middle path, or the center point of the infinity symbol, then we can start to be honest with ourselves and say, okay, do give yourself forgiveness there, but hey, maybe you still got a little bit of work to do. And it's that inner dialogue of
well, and that's the inner labyrinth of Pluto, right?
Exactly.
It's the process. And actually, and the Cygnus, what you just said is really deeply the central star of the Cygnus. The heart of it is the Sadar, and that's letting ourselves off the cross, so to speak. Like, just for what you said, not to be in service to servitude. But really, this whole pattern shows us what we have to do with our consciousness, especially with the Phoenix, of letting it go. So I just want that as background for the birds, because when we talk about the stars, we need to kind of know the whole container.
Yeah, no, good one.
Because we have 2 stars coming from well, I'll go back. We have 2 stars coming from Aquia and 1 from the swan. And they almost touch again, like the head of the swan comes down towards the eagle. Yeah. So we will recognize, a lot of us know the summer triangle is fairly commonly known. So here's the swan. Its head is, we're going to see, is part of this Cazimi, and it's near the eagle, or Altair is one of the stars. I just wanted to bring this out because this is all in relationship to the star Vega, because the star Vega is where major initiations happen, initiations into understanding the right use of power And again, the right use of power is, can we get out of the way and let the divine frequency run through us? Okay, so the Aquia constellation in general, as a constellation, the celestial eagle being is actually a connection. It's a messenger towards the sun's gate. It acts like a living bridge of consciousness, this whole idea of the eagle. Because the reason the eagle has this, aura and association, it's the eagle that carries us up to the realm of the gods, if you will, to Vega for initiation. Why the realm of the gods? Because it's opening yourself to higher consciousness, because then you can let that frequency come through you, can sustain it. But of course, this is not about disappearing into the higher realms. This is about being integrated, fully functioning humans on Earth. So your initiation into Vega isn't to go off. It's to be of service as a leader in the community you're entrusted with. And it's a leader who handles power well. And the community could literally be just your partnership. It could be your family. It could be your school. It could be your town. It could be the nation. So you're going to be entrusted with some community in your life. There's going to be relational dynamics. And as I said, handling power well means the ability to hold and sustain the divine frequency. Okay, so now we've got 2 stars from the Eagle constellation on this Cazimi, Altair and Antares. So what are they telling us?
Isn't it interesting though, Leslie, that we've gone to this star and we're moving into Aquarius, which is more sort of 5th dimensional mind, but also sovereignty, I guess we could say. But what's interesting is we're moving out now of the misuse of power from the 29th degree of Capricorn, with Pluto giving us that opportunity to have another look, and immediately it moves into this 1st degree, and we encounter this beautiful star of Altair, which is talking about leadership and perhaps how we can look at the piece we've just been through with Pluto exposing how that's been misused and saying, okay, now it's your turn in these 1st degrees. Pluto is going to give you the opportunity to connect with stars like Altair and maybe take yourself on an initiation into true power, true leadership that is not of the top-down elite variety that we've been experiencing for the last little while.
Right. So if you think of yourself as doing the inner labyrinth of the gate of hell in Pluto, you're now, what incites you to move towards the gate of rebirth is you start to see a little light, like in the pathway of the birds. When the phoenix totally goes down, the only thing that can keep them even attached to any sense of life is to look ahead to the dove, that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, they certainly don't feel it, but it's like, oh, it's there. And so, right, what we're seeing with these eagle stars now is, yeah, there's a light here. There's another way of being. So let's look at what they specifically tell us. So we've got Altair is actually a call to the destiny of leadership, and it's calling us to take up responsibility for the planet in some way. And it's saying, open your consciousness because the bridge of initiation has reached you. The time has come to take up your destiny as a leader, but remember what leader means. Accept responsibility and greatness. Accept this with responsibility and greatness. I'm not saying this right, but in other words, they're saying this is a role of great dignity. It's understand the dignity involved. And what you're to do with this is handle your community well and wisely so that whatever you touch will start to flourish, because you're going to be carrying that divine frequency.
It's a huge
responsibility. It doesn't have to be like we elect a president like this. It's each one of us has to be, it's that whole idea of the little candle and that you just, your light, if it even touches one more, and that, so it's the field growing that way.
I guess it could also be, if we're talking about leaders and communities, it's not necessarily talking only about maybe your local town, your local village, or your country, but it could also be the area in which you specialize in life. Can you be a leader within your own community relating to the work that you do, in your healing community, in your construction community, within your communication community, any community, any kind of community?
Well, you're exactly right. And that helps move us into the Aquarian ideal that we're full individuals of our own unique sovereign way that the Creator made us, and yet we're aware of the whole. So we're integrating. And our question as a society becomes how can I serve? Because you're understanding that when you feel your own leadership and the divine coming through you, it's like all you want to do is serve this divine. And you look at someone next to you and you go, oh my goodness, they're doing that too. And you want to support each other. We lose competition and all these kind of, the way the hierarchy of the Capricornian box starts to dissolve, because the Aquarian thing is to just feel it and look at it differently. So shall I go on with Tarazed?
Yeah, please do. I mean, there's so many thoughts whirling around in my head, but yeah, please
I
continue.
know. And I know, because that's why I put this all down, because I
Well, the
could go
material is so
many
rich, Leslie. I mean,
tangents.
we can go in so many different directions with all
Right,
of it. And hopefully
right.
we're just giving the sort of the light bulb moments for our audience to go, oh my gosh, that somehow resonates with me. Let me look into this in a little bit more detail, because we could spend like as we have done before, ages just on one star. So we're trying to give the snapshot of what is happening
Right.
here through this sort
Yeah,
of.
we need to see whole pictures and get the feeling. So
Yeah.
Tarazed is the memory of the eagle, which is interesting because this is a look back. We're asked to be reminded of our own pasts. How many times have we experienced a leading role? When and how were we successful with that leading role? How and when did we fail, fall, or abuse our power in that leading role? Or when did we hear the call and yet we were afraid and we shirked responsibility? So all these are possibilities that have occurred or can occur when we accept, greater responsibility and leadership. But the Tarazed is saying, okay, let's look at this, let's go into our leadership from a solid ground by analyzing. Okay, so I'll keep going.
Yeah, please.
So the next one, that was the eagle. Now, as I showed you before, the Cygnus constellation, the head of the swan, Alberio, was coming down towards the eagle. And this is where a delegation of fairies and elves live. And you can almost think of it, all right, if you're on the head of a bird, you're looking down and you're seeing the grid work of the world below you, right? So you can almost say it's like apprehending from a mind, something that can see a larger. But this whole alberio represents the consciousness of how the ecosystems of the planets should be arranged for ecological balance. Because it's like you've got the aerial view that the fairies and elves, who are co-creators of all this and only know how to create and balance, are riding there looking down, and they can see the grid work and go, oh, that's out of balance. So it's the ability to have that big scope view and really have the impetus towards understanding that ecosystems inherently can carry ecological balance if we honor the principles that set them up, basically. Okay, so that's reminding us of that. We're being asked to come into greater consciousness of our planet, our role in it, as well as us in the cosmos as part of our planet. Okay, so we come back now. We finished the birds. We have two left. We have the Beta Hydra from the female serpents, which we'll do next, and then a last dolphin star from that Sagette constellation that I pointed out earlier. Okay, Beta Hydra is from the Hydrus constellation that was first apprehended around the 1500s, and it finally made its way into like the astrological cataloging that happens around the 1700s. Now that's very relevant as far as other aspects of cosmic history that we won't go into at the moment, but what it represents is that was the sort of the start of the drifting into the collective consciousness of the return of the feminine. And if we were to look into what was happening on the planet then, you could see how little sparks of, wait, maybe women aren't just, nothing. But anyway, what Beta Hydra it's a response from the goddess. It's a consciousness that's bringing back the totem animal of the Kundalini stake, which brings feminine awareness. And that whole feminine awareness brings the return of tantric possibilities, because the female serpent part of us is a healing nation, but it's also that which understands Tantra. Tantra sexually as one aspect where two bodies can combine to become and understand that they're one with spirit and everything. But it's much more broad than that. It's very much probably more like the Lemurian experience of life, is really understanding that you're resonantly part of the whole and being able to connect into that. So that's the whole feminine orientation. And Beta Hydrae is coming in with this. This star wasn't even recognized in 2005 and 6 when the books were first put out. This had to come out around 2014, I think it was. Further messages as a collective was coming back into the photon belt and starting to be ready to wake up to it. So, but what this star brings in is an impetus for a revolution, but kind of we'll call it a sexual revolution, because it's demanding equal rights for women. But more than that, it's demanding that humanity be restored to the way the Creator made us, as two complementary pieces that are very synergistic. But what this star brings in is a driving force and an inner urge for emancipation and independence of the whole feminine idea, and that's sexually, physically, emotionally, and mentally. Like, let's get over these boxes we're put in. Okay.
And just to say, this doesn't just apply to the female kind on the planet. This also applies to the males too. This is the feminine energy as manifesting between the masculine and feminine genders. But I also, I have I totally agree with what you've just said, but also feeling that that this is, for me, it kind of carries two energies here, Leslie. First of all, one is the energy of the Tantra, which is alchemy, which can be done at the personal level, inner alchemizing of lower frequency energies into something higher. But also, and I think this is really what this is saying, is like somehow on our planet, we have lost the understanding of sacred sexuality. We don't
understand
that when two beings of male and female gender come together in conscious awareness and they can join their energies consciously, not just the physical, but the energetic, that is one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful, potent manifestation energies on the planet, but in the universe. And what can happen? Well, if it's done, consciously, babies can be born consciously, but it's not just about bringing new physical life. It's also bringing new energetic life. There are many beings that can be born energetically without ever coming into physicality through the conjoining of equally balanced tantric energies from male and female. So yes, I agree. I think this is a sexual revolution, but I would say it's a sexual revolution for all of the inner goddess within all of us.
Yes.
I think that, we've seen this terrible mishmashing, objectification, particularly the female kind, onslaught and proliferation of pornographic material across all of the platforms in our world. It's like, coming to children now under the ages of 10 and even younger, and all of these things. And it's given this really skew-whiffed idea of what intimacy is about, and it's so far away from understanding that if it's done properly, as we were taught in Buddhism, in Tibetan Buddhism, that it's a creative force. And of course we know that because babies are made, but we're so sort of narrow in that thinking that we don't see the possibilities beyond that. And I feel over the last 3 or 4 years that energy on the planet has been incredibly suppressed, and that isn't a conversation for another day. But I feel like this is giving the opportunity for us to return to a more sacred sense of that connection. Would you agree?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Everything you said, this is a well orchestrated thing that has occurred in humanity by the fallen ones to keep us from realizing everything is point counterpoint. So this Beta Hydrae coming out, this ray of light, this, let's call it soul galactic response to these third dimensional things that are keeping, and you know what Barbara Handclough says in one of her books, she says, when a human couple comes into that kind of tantric union, it rocks the galaxy. It's a galactic affair, so so that's like, we also can understand that seeds an energy into the galaxy. It's not like we're just down here on Earth and we're less than. We are such active agents. It works both ways. As we master things here, we're sending that up to our stellar counterparts, because we're co-evoluting, we're evolving. But it's not like, in the old hierarchical thought as, oh, we're bad and it's this bigger part telling us what to do and we've better get with it. No, I mean, we're literally leverage points down here. If we can move in the density of the third dimension, it's like sending out some kind of homeopathic remedy. So we have, that's part of understanding our responsibility as humans and for the planet. And
And
as
also, sorry, as you're saying this, Leslie, it just reminds me of the thing we just talked about power and how do we use power. And this is another a brilliant
exactly.
where we misuse power over each other sexually. And we can say it's probably been predominantly against the female kind over the last couple of thousand years. But prior to that, we don't know. If we go into the mother spider situation, we know how the female consumes the male in that realm. And so we can understand perhaps why some aspects of the masculine were not so keen on being devoured and consumed. And so we can understand from all of these cosmic stories how we got to this place. But this is all about coming back to that center point of the infinity symbol, right? And everything coming back into a perfect balance, because you're right, we are the 10th hierarchy. We are godlike beings. And just because we seem like an insignificant speck down here on planet Earth does not mean that we have the potency to create all kinds of things, particularly through this tantric energy that's available to all of us.
No, look it, we came in as those beings to be totally constricted, you know, as our sun did. I mean, we're playing this out in the astral fog to realize. So let's keep going. There's one more star that's from the Sagittae constellation. And as I said, the dolphin part of ourselves are healers, and they've never lost contact with the divine mind. They are a total contact and frequency with the divine mind. They have been hurt, but they've never been a part of ourselves that's purposely like exercised our sovereignty and free will to leave our path. So there is, now after that one attack on the dolphin, a kind of agreement was set up between the cosmic humans and the dolphins to help protect the waters. And Alpha Sagittae is a very strong dolphin energy that's about this kind of protection and leading. It's a part of ourselves. Like if you have this on your Antares code, you may recognize this in yourself, but now we're saying it's coming into the collective as an energy too. It's a part of ourself that can feel when help is needed in times of mass deaths and violent and sudden deaths, and can show up on the etheric, so maybe in dream time, if we're not fully conscious of it, and help guide souls through this astral field that's a mess to the light. And it's the dolphin part that sings these frequencies of love and light, builds cocoons of light literally around souls to come and cradle them and to float them over the astral plane, because that's burdened with the fears and the soul traps. It's guiding them to another holy island of light, so they're safe to have their soul's journey. So as an example, we've got physical dolphins in the world, but we've got etheric dolphins, and then we've got this as a soul aspect of ourselves. So it's kind of all there. But during the tsunami, for instance, in early 2000s that happened in Asia, there were 200 or 300 people who died just instantly. The wave came in and they were taken out. Bayanonico saw that a ring of dolphins came, literally physical dolphins in the ocean came around, because the dolphins, when something like this comes out, they have they're all connected, but their cry out goes inside, take up the island formation. And the island formation is to form around this tragedy that's happening and create like a tunnel that will help them shepherd these souls, as well as individually taking the souls and do what I said. So Alpha Sagittae is a deep kind of empathic awareness. So I think it's very interesting that this is coming out now, because we have so much mass death and violent sudden death. And it's saying that we as humans, with our heart ability and our consciousness, can actually help those who are dying, in a sense, in service to our awakening, because it's so horrific. We can reciprocatingly help them. I mean, we're being called in on an unconscious level. I don't know if we have to make this conscious or not, but the star is out now in this Pluto Cazimi. So anything to clarify about that? I don't know if I was totally clear.
No, it's all kind of clear. So maybe let's take this down as we enter into the final few minutes of what has been another rapid fire cosmic
Yeah,
history.
I got 3 more points and then we can go through them or we
Okay.
can.
Sure. Then we'll finish the points and we'll come to the conclusion, because I mean, to me, the picture's quite clear about the energies. But yeah, let's
Okay.
replace
So
it now.
what I want to, since we've been talking microcosm, macrocosm, I want to do a microcosmic view, a macrocosmic view, and then a concluding thought. This
Sure.
is my microcosmic view, and it comes from, I've been reading the Mayan Factor. It's a path, maybe hidden by our faces, but the path beyond technology. It's Jose Arguelles, who's, the law of time, and that's a whole beautiful system of galactic thinking. That's done more with numbers, and the Stellar Nations has kind of done more with pictures. But so he asked the question in the book, and this is here's our third dimensional stance. What is flying to our sense fields if we're the passenger in the airplane? Well, when we get on a plane, we hear the coarse vibratory shudder of the jet engines. We might smell the odor of the fuel, and we get a microwave meal. Okay, that's flying in the third dimension. And then he said, what if flying is instead a capacity to identify consciousness with resonance and ride the frequencies of the different levels of reality? And that's exactly what happens when we become stellar aware and resonant. And it brings up in my mind of the Aquarian idea of going into new technology. Our consciousness, we are the technology. I mean, we know about the possibility of traveling in the Merkaba. Mer means light, Ka means spirit, Ba means body. So light, spirit, body, there's the capacity of us knowing that, and then our technology serving that or growing out of it. So that's one thought of how could we be leaders on the microcosm with our frequency, and why do we want to, and what's possible to happen here? So the next thought is, let's take it to a macrocosmic, and this may be a little hard to see. I'm just going to kind of summarize this. We're hiding the fact that this comes from the book called the Pleiad. What is it called?
Pleiadian Perspectives on Human Evolution.
Okay, I can't see it because our face is on it. Yeah. Pleiadian Perspectives on Human Evolution by Amora Kuan Yin. The reason I liked this picture, I couldn't get anything better of this, but it's a page of the book. She talks about how, or the Pleiadian perspective, we evolve in cycles of learning. We have these great growth cycles, and then the next, we finish a cycle, and it's a spiral nature where we get caught up in the next one, and we're sort of raised into a new cycle in the spiral. So this is what she says we are now. At the completion point of the circular orbit around the great central sun of all that is, the Milky Way galaxy enters a diagonal connecting link to the next ring on the spiral, which is an initiatic step into a new evolutionary cycle as well. So this is what is occurring now. We, the people of Earth, are not only at the end of a 26,000-year Earth-Sun Pleiadian cycle, which is the entire Pleiadian system, which includes our solar ring. We're at the end of a 230 million year orbit around the galactic center. And the entire Milky Way galaxy is at the completion of an infinitely longer orbit around the great central sun. So all three of these cycles are synchronistically and simultaneously completing the last step of a spiral dance within a dance within a dance, making this a very crucial transition time. And the objective is to finish without anyone's toes getting stepped on, so the next more sophisticated and gracious dance can begin. And then what she says goes on in the next page, as I just put here, we're moving from an evolutionary spiral of self-discovery and exploration, which with the polarities of our lives, the duality, has served us well. We've done shadow, we've done light, we've been it all, victimizers. That's okay. That's self-discovery and exploration, which brings us to the next evolutionary cycle, which is a spiral of self-mastery and completion. So that's our initiation into it. And if you think about the eagle bringing us up to use power well, it all really comes together, because it's the self-mastery and completion is being able to sustain that divine frequency, to move in different galactic realms. And Bay and Aniko say, we are moving towards a galactic rearrangement. It's not just like us solving problems on the Earth. This is part of a much bigger container. All right, I would conclude with, we conclude with so many different thoughts or questions, but what I felt as I finished reflecting on this is really a sensitive time for our sun, because as we enter another Aquarian age, it's the echo of the time that he left his divine destiny. But then, of course, by resonance, that's a sensitive time for ourselves, because it's the same cycle for us. So I look at this Cazimi and I say, wow, is our sun entering the gate of rebirth? And he's got a whole different role in the cosmos now that we're in the photon belt. And then I ask, can we enter the gate of rebirth? And then, of course, there's many more questions. What does this mean? But what we just went through gives us some, hints and understanding about our direction. So that's all I have as far as the slides. I can take those down.
It's quite a bit. So, okay, so maybe just for the final few moments here then, Leslie, so much information. Thank you so much for bringing all of that to bear here in the presentation. I loved it all. Of course, we talked about it before, so I sort of knew what was coming, but again, it's given me so much food for thought. And, if I can just perhaps take 20 seconds or a little bit more to summarize the various different styles. So we have the initial energies of the betrayal of people in power, people who are meant to be protecting us, selling us out to other nefarious forces, etc. With the sharks. And then we have also the whole piece about power, the misuse of power, reviewing of how perhaps we've misused power ourselves before we start to condemn the perception of those maybe who we perceive doing that to us still, so that we can make sure that we're not falling into the same trap and still in some sort of polarization. But then what we have, I think, is really interesting is we've got this energy of albiro coming through, which is about the ecosystems, which I find fascinating because it seems to be a little bit different from the other energies, but it's so absolutely on point because, this is all about I saw an interesting piece this week that said the Gaia has already ascended. Gaia ascended in 2012. And I kind of largely agree with that. And you said something really recently that, of course, is in the books, which is that there are two beings here. There is terra firma, Earth, which was here long before and settled by many other beings, particularly the more dragon-like Draco beings. And then we have Gaia, who somehow was brought in to fuse and elevate. And I think that we're coming now to the culmination point of that, of some sort of universal sentient being, which we can call Gaia, coming into a place of integration with terra firma, which is another being. And now we're in a place where those two are coming to the final, I guess it's the her story, the his story, and the our story. The same thing is going on for our planet. And there's two fusions of different types of energy coming in here. And we're getting that elevation, but we need to make sure that we are in right relationship with the fairies and the elves and the ecosystems in conjunction with Father, Son, and
That's
Mother.
Our body. It's our body.
Right? Yes, we can say that too. And so it's about our body. It's about the body of the planet that we live on, Mother Earth, Gaia, and how to bring all of that into right relation. But then also we've got perhaps the more difficult piece to deal with, which is the crossing maybe or guiding of human souls in times of mass death and possible, etc., etc. Many people saying that could happen in 2024. There's lots of reasons why.
Look, it's happening already. Look at Gaza. Look at, it's been happening. So I think the point on that is if we hold, and it's not spiritual bypassing, but if we hold the bigger evolutionary understanding in a frequency of the divine and love, if we can be anchor points for that, and we're present, like sort of as the dolphin part of ourselves around all these souls who are leaving so suddenly and violently and terribly, we're offering like the we're offering the light at the end of the tunnel. They're not, we're helping them not get lost in the soul traps of the astral,
Yeah.
which would just complicate our field and complicate Gaia's ascension. So we really are being called on a unconscious, let's make it conscious level, not to be like holy praying there, but just to know with our human hearts that this is a whole process and that we trust it. My cats, my cats agree.
But
I
Leslie,
also, yeah, you
I was
want to
just
say
going
something?
to say, just to finish my thought on that a second, which is you're right. We have to take a 5D perspective that we are eternal beings and that we live and apparently we live and die here on planet Earth. But the truth is that we don't die. We're eternal. And unfortunately, according to some choices, maybe some people on the planet made they weren't in the I don't know. This is duality, so I'm trying to find the right words. But they weren't in a position maybe to step up in that energetic frequency at this point in their own cycles. And we can say that about many, many beings, not just humans, but all types of beings. And as a person who does psychopomp work and guiding dead beings through the realms to the land of their ancestors, we know that sometimes aspects of ourself or even whole parts of ourself get stuck in that crossing.
Exactly.
And that's where the light needs to be shined because for sure people die every day. That's nothing new. That's been going on for, well, forever, really. But how do we ensure that they don't get stuck in the more tricky place that perhaps
Well,
Pluto is wanting us to look at and say, hey, what happens in
right.
that crossover point?
And also think about it this way. If if we as a mass consciousness on Earth held this higher understanding and felt ourselves like giving it to our brothers and sisters who are leaving because of all these things, it suddenly it sort of makes the story have a bigger picture. Wow, you left horribly in this incarnation, but wow, look what's going on. And it sort of all of a sudden makes them almost, it gives them a purpose and a point. I mean, I would imagine it could take away some of the trauma. I mean, this is all kind of esoteric, but I still think we have to understand energy is real and we need to really take responsibility for our thoughts and our energy like this, and then know that we can use it very effectively, that it's not a little thing to, think of our, because a lot of us are so kind of complicating that by we feel so terrible about the situation in Israel and Gaza, and we're pushed into sides. And this is saying we need to transcend that. We need to hold this in the bigger cosmic understanding of what's happened and just bless and help those souls, see that there's a light, that there's a bigger purpose, that we're going to do this together, that they've maybe even served it by bringing our consciousness here with this terrible dying. Like this is the depth of the hell of Pluto. This Pluto is going to push our faces in something until we get it. And it's not going to let up until we get it. It could get worse and worse and worse. I mean, I don't mean it, I'm not trying to sound terrible. I'm
No, no,
talking
no.
about,
I think we have to talk about these things, and I think the whole point of Pluto doing its final piece now is to show us where those bird nation stars are asking the same question. It's like, what happens when too much power is concentrated at the top of the mountain, Capricorn, and is being misused, and we can see is going to create the situation that this dolphin is wanting us to help us assist with. But I also think that's where the female serpent star, the more tantric or alchemical aspect can come in too and say, okay, we're going to have to help some beings alchemize out of their 3D density into a different form. Doesn't mean they're dead. It doesn't mean that they've gone away, never to be seen again, or that they can't have some influence, because we know that there are many powerful beings who are not in physical form who are absolutely assisting us in this transition. So, it's all about perspective. And, as long as we're not too attached to this particular spacesuit, as long as Davyd doesn't believe that this is all that there is to Davyd or to Leslie or whatever, then we can say, hey, I'm a much more fluid, etheric, energetic being than this 3D representation on the screen.
well, it's about you recognizing yourself as an agent of singing the song of the, because all these are different notes in the song of the cosmic. But what is that ultimately? It's not about masculine or feminine. I mean, it is, because those are the polarities we use. It's ultimately about us learning to be a new mix of spirit and matter. I mean, it's actually rather fascinatingly beautiful, incredibly exciting. And when you really start to understand the stellar nations and embody them, you understand that each nation is like an experiment in being a little more matter or a little more spirit. And you see, like the Pegasus were gifted with being such fluid spirit, and they were to be messengers to bring the light, seeds of light into the darkness. And it's a very fun mission, but you really have to know the parameters of it. But the point of it is they were a little more spirit than matter, and their yearning was, oh, let us just be settled down for a little bit. And their rebellion was to take a little expedition without consulting or asking the divine. Well, we're just going to kind of sneak over here and stay a little longer so we can experience ourselves. And what they did is they cut their cord. It's a whole long story. So yeah, I don't know where to take this, except that we can keep taking it everywhere. you know.
And I think that you've just given me, I think, the best possible title for this. I mean, obviously, it's a cosmic history codes about the Pluto Cazimi and Pluto entering Aquarius, but I think that title, A New Mix of Spirit and Matter, kind of sums up what this is all about. So thank you for that, Leslie. We've rattled through our allotted time, and as always with me and Leslie, we've gone a little bit over, but hopefully it's all been relevant and interesting. Leslie, I just want to add in a couple of bits of information for our audience, which I think could be useful, which is just about some dates coming up for the calendar in relation to this whole piece. So Mercury conjuncts Pluto at 0 degrees of Aquarius on February the 5th. Then Mars conjuncts Pluto at 0 degrees of Aquarius on February the 13th. And then Venus conjuncts Pluto at 0 degrees of Aquarius on February the 17th. So we've got Sun, Mercury, Venus and Mars, all of the interpersonal planets, all, I guess you could say, getting a blessing from Pluto, but really I think, or giving Pluto a blessing, but really I think they're getting their new mission codes from Pluto as Pluto enters Aquarius. So just wanted to put that into the diary. And then the second set of dates also, which people might find interesting because I've mapped them out, is just some of the upcoming Cazimi. So there's a Saturn Cazimi at 9 degrees of Pisces on February the 28th. I think that's going to be interesting. There's a Chiron Cazimi on the eclipse of April the 8th at 19 degrees of Aries. So I think that's definitely a slam, bam, thank you, ma'am kind of a moment. And then this one's super interesting for me because it's on my own Jupiter, as I'm having a Jupiter return this year. Jupiter Cazimi on May the 18th at 28 degrees of Taurus, which I think is going to be a big moment for me.
We should be talking about these from stellar perspectives, because every single one of those is, and especially the one on Taurus, oh my God, because
I've got my code here, so I know quite a bit about that one. But
that brings in alcohol, okay? And I mean, we have our mythical understanding of the tone of alcohol, but the cosmic history story, really brings that out in a fuller way. And we're being asked to deal with alcohol. So there's two things happening here. There's Pluto pushing our face in it, but it's also like there's a gate of rebirth. It's our responsibility. If we can take that gate of rebirth, and each one of those planets is getting, the blessing of Pluto, as you said, but I would say, yeah, like you concluded, whoa, let's look at the gate of rebirth. What, for ourselves, for our sun, for the Milky Way galaxy, for whatever this cosmic rearrangement is going to be.
Right. So I think as a conclusion, we've got all of these wonderful inputs. I think that what you've done, Leslie, really beautifully is give us the variety of inputs that are coming at this time. We've got what's happened already, where we are right now, and how we can work with these other higher frequency energies to keep alchemizing, keep transforming, working with Mother Earth, working with the sentient beings, with the nature spirits, the fairies, the elves, all of the cosmic codes within us. And saying, you know what, let's not point the fingers too much at the bad guys, because there are no bad guys really. There's just people that make decisions and they've affected us. And how do we alchemize those into a place of mercy and forgiveness and grace and all of the things that we need, so that we say, thank you, everybody. Each and every one of you here on planet Earth have assisted in the great evolutionary process we are all in. And there is no good and bad. There's just an experience. And that is what we came here to do, right? On planet Earth. So do you have, do you have a final thought, Leslie, before we wrap up for today?
Sorry, I was jumping in before I forgot my final thought. I would just say, and it really just builds on what you say with a different picture, as we learn to become sovereign beings and exercise our free will, what we need to do is understand how it's in balance with divine will. And I see the divine will as an ecosystem. And that means if we know how to be agents and aware of the ecosystem, of what the divine laws are and the cosmic laws, and which tell us how everything works together perfectly. They're not trying to be punitive or box us in. It's like, you want to be fully free in your spirit body as matter? Well, yes, you can be, but these are the divine laws, and it's an ecosystem. And what is an ecosystem? It's inherently about balance, and then everything flourishes. So I would kind of leave it at that and say, as things come up this year, they're going to be really shocking and hard, perhaps. It's just our duty to keep this bigger perspective, because we are calling it in and creating it simultaneously. It is kind of there, but we have to link with it. So I think I can stop right there. I'm not trying to tell
So you've
people,
just got me
give us
lost
a
in thought
lecture,
now.
but I feel so passionate about it.
I love what you said there, just thinking about the divine ecosystem and seeing that we're all a part of that. And I think that is the most beautiful place that we can leave today's talk. Hopefully everybody's enjoyed this. It's coming out a couple of days ahead of the Cazimi, so we're giving everybody a chance to really try and hold the energies and remember that our intention, our thoughts, super powerful. We are some of the most powerful beings around, apparently. And it's about time that we started to accept that power from a place of responsibleness. And you know what I think, Leslie? This is a moment where humanity steps up from being a child teenager to being a teenage adult, basically. And this is a bit like having an 18th birthday, I think, or 21st birthday or something like that. And how do we handle this ascent into maturity and adulthood?
No, it's the 48th birthday. It's after the Uranus opposition. It's like coming into true adulthood.
I'm going to be 48 this year, so maybe this is
okay. Get with it,
some
David.
sort of
You've got to come
prophetic
into
talk
true
for me.
adulthood. So,
I don't know.
yeah.
I feel like I'm a bit short of being a true adult. I think I've got another 20 years before I get there, but we'll see. Maybe.
Well, then we have to keep the inner child alive. So what do we know?
Exactly.
But no, this is all, it's all quite beautiful. Yeah, we need to, it's okay, and we need to breathe, and it's about simultaneously being in grief and being in total love and union. And there's, it's all there.
Being human and what we came here to be.
You know what it is? Yeah, when I say be simultaneously in grief and love, it's integration of the polarities, and then it's a transfiguration of them. And you've used the word alchemization, but that's the time we're at. And the analogy you just built with, yes, coming out of our teenage years, that's what our sun is telling us. I mean, our sun did, that's where this whole thing started, kind of that energy of let's discover. And that's the cycle we've been in of self-discovery. And now we're moving into a mastery cycle.
Wow, our host sister. Well, thank you, Leslie. Thank you for that final thought. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this special edition of the Cosmic History Codes. Myself and Leslie will be scouring the diary, I think, probably immediately after we hit pause on this one to see what's coming up next, because it's coming thick and fast. And, I gave you a few dates, everybody. Stick them in your diary. Keep working with the energies. Take your inputs from wherever resonates with you, run them through your system, and allow yourself to come to your own truth on this path of evolutionary expansion at this time for all of us. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you all again very soon. Ciao for now.
Thank you. Bye.